folks, the guest this week is someone I've known a long time. I mean, I've read several of his books, and he is joining us from Orange County, California, and his name is Dr. Kerry Johnson. He's an MBA, PhD, and he's the author of 7 best-selling books. The one that I like the best is called Behavioral Investing, Why Smart People Make Dumb Mistakes with Their Money. Kerry, welcome in.
Hey, thank you, Pete.
Now, let's talk about this. I mean, why do smart people, why do they make dumb mistakes with their money?
Well, the short reason is they're emotionally attached to their money. The long answer is there's about 9 or 10 really serious mistakes that people make. For example, one is mental accounting. Pete, you probably discovered sometimes that people say, oh, well, I know I lost money in the market, but it was just on paper. It wasn't that big of a deal. Well, the bottom line is if you found $100 on the sidewalk, would you take the $100 and invest it wisely, or would you go and blow it someplace because it's found money? People treat money differently depending how they make it, and they don't look at money the same on investment money versus money they make. There's a great story, Pete, about this guy who went to Las Vegas on his honeymoon, and his wife was getting dressed, and he said, sweetheart, I'm going to go down to the roulette table. I'll be back in a little while. She said, be back in an hour and a half because, I want to go out to dinner. And he took $5 off the counter. Well, he went to the roulette table, put that $5 on red 23. The ball rolled down the chute and around, and it hit. He was just ecstatic. He decided he was just going to keep gambling. The next roll, it hit, it hit, it hit, it hit, it hit. And he had $5,000 in his hand. He put everything on black 3. The ball rolled down the chute, around and around and around, and it landed on red 13.
Uh-oh.
He lost everything. Went back to his wife, and she said, how'd you do? He said, not bad. I only lost $5. So that's a really good example of somebody who really doesn't understand money, because he had $5,000 in his pocket, but he only invested $5 out of his pocket, and he thought that was different.
Yeah, it's funny how people do that. They justify it, too, by, well, I only have 5 less than I started with, yet in the middle of that, they were up big. And that happens in the market with a lot of folks, and that's why money management is so important. And money management is just not having someone tell you where to put things. It's having someone tell you when to take things out, isn't it, Kerry?
Yeah, that's very important. One of the things that I try to tell people, I get a lot of speech, I do a lot of client events, and an advisor will have me speak at a client event. There'll be usually a whole city worth of people, and I tell everybody, you can't manage your own money. You're too emotionally involved, and you can't do it without having a brilliant guy like Pete involved with you, because you just, you can't make the right decisions. Pete, do you realize that in the market right now, 60% of the people that are in the stock market manage their own money? And on average, they do 6% less than the index, the S&P, the Big Board, the New York Stock Exchange, 6% less because they make emotional decisions.
Yeah, and fear and greed are 2 of the biggest emotional decisions that get so many people in trouble, aren't they?
Yeah, that's true. It's fear and greed, yeah.
Now, you have something you call status quo bias, too. You've identified that. What is status quo bias, and how can someone prevent that or fix it?
Well, it's kind of an interesting concept. Change is the biggest glue known to mankind, the fear of change, the lack of change, status quo bias. There was a really interesting study that was done by a guy named William Samuelson, and he had students, and he said, we're going to offer you 3-4 stocks. One stock had a slightly less risk than the index. One stock had a little bit more risk. A bond which had a 6% municipal tax-free return, and another bond was kind of a junk bond. It got about a 9% return. And he asked these students which one they want to pick. Well, some students picked a more risky stock. Some students picked the municipal bond that had a tax-free 6% return. And then when they made their choice, he said, well, you already own one of these in your portfolio. Now, here's the shocker. 56% of the students chose to stay with what they had instead of stick with the decision they made. But it gets worse. If you have a car, let's call it a Mazda, BMW, maybe Mercedes, and if this is your second car in that brand, the next one you buy, if it's the same brand, you'll spend an average of $12,000 more because you're going to stick with the brand you're unwilling to negotiate. But here's the worst part, Pete. You've had situations like this before, but a woman from one of my clients actually came to her. She said, I lost 45% of my portfolio in 2009, and I'm 67 years old, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't make the money back. I'm not sure I can even have enough money to last as long as my life does, and I'm terrified. And my client, the financial advisor, said, well, we need to keep part of your money safe. We're going to try to grow it slowly, but we've got to keep it safe. And the lady was in tears. She said, "Thank you so much. You've been so helpful for me. I wish I would have known about you 10 years ago, because 10 years ago I had a broker who pretty much lost all this money, and he hasn't talked to me in the last 10 years, not once." Well, the lady came back the next day without the check, and she said to my client, "I'm sorry, but I talked to my broker. I haven't spoken to him in 10 years. He told me to keep the money where it is, so therefore I'm going to stick with him." Status quo bias is the biggest glue known to mankind, and if we can't listen to the financial advisor, most of us are pretty much doomed.
Yeah. And folks, again, we're talking to Dr. Kerry Johnson. He's an MBA, PhD. He's got 7 best-selling books out there. We're talking about behavioral investing, why smart people make dumb mistakes with their money. It's available everywhere. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any bookstore. I think I even saw it in the airport, Kerry, one time there just recently.
So.
Now, but people were making, here's why we're talking about this, because people have made some good decisions, but they can erase all those good decisions with some bad bias or bad decisions, or not really mentally mapping out where they want to be in the future, correct?
Yeah, the goals are important, and that's what you're for, Pete. You're the person that's going to help them map out things. But, staying consistent, though, as they go to those goals is really important, too. And one of the things I talk about in the book is called sunk cost fallacy. And sunk cost fallacy basically says that a lot of people will wait until their investments go back up before they sell them. So the market goes down, it goes up, but maybe something is down by maybe 30%, 20%, 15%. And they say, "Pete, as soon as that goes back up, I'm going to give you all the money, I'm going to let you have it." Well, the problem is that if they're not willing to buy that investment again, they probably should sell it and give it to you. There was a really interesting project in Boston called the Big Dig, and they were trying to build a tunnel between Boston and the Logan Airport. Well, 2 years late and $5 billion over budget, one of the city council people called a meeting, and they said, "We got to fire the contractor. This guy's incompetent." Well, the city council people said, "We've invested $5 billion, and we can't fire the guy now. We got to let them complete the project." Well, 3 years longer, they're now $15 billion over budget. And when it opened up, the tunnel opened up, a tile came from the roof of the tunnel, through a windshield, killed a family of 4.
Yep.
But it gets worse. In 2008, George Bush, and I'll be an equal opportunity offender here, George Bush pumped in $38 billion into GM because everybody said, "Well, they're going to go bankrupt. We're going to lose 1 million jobs because GM is going to go bankrupt. We got to stave them and help them avoid the bankruptcy." $38 billion later, and then in May of 2009, Barack Obama heard the same excuse, and he said, "Well, we can't let them go bankrupt. We've got to save 1 million jobs. A lot of union jobs we have to protect there." $40 billion in May of 2009. So guess what happened in September of 2009? They went bankrupt.
Yep.
And every man, woman in America now owes $600 because the government had fallen victim to sunk cost fallacy, which pretty much every investor in America does. And that's why, Pete, they need you so desperately.
Sunk cost fallacy. The Big Dig in Boston was, I was there a week after the tile fell and killed the people there. So I'm glad that that I was a week late going to Boston. But I mean, that was a big mess because they kept dropping more and more money into it. And I remember at one time, they had 2 teams from 2 different sides digging a tunnel, and they were supposed to meet in the middle. And when they got close, they were off. Like, they could hear the other folks, but they were going by them. So they had to redig a little bit there. So that just shows you it doesn't matter how much money you pour into something. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
So, all right. Well, so we got about a minute left here, but let's talk to our listeners directly, Kerry, because I know you've been in the financial field. You've been around the arena of emotional decisions for years and years, decades. But what are some of the things that people can do right now if they want to make sure, especially if we're talking about retirement money? It's one thing to lose money in your 401k when you're young, but as you get older, and we call it the financial red zone, you need to get in a place where you're not going to lose that money or not going to worry about that money every single day. What are some steps right now people can take to just make sure they're going in that right direction?
Well, the easy answer is they need to work with a really solid financial advisor like you, Pete. And the most important thing is the advisor. We know people know they have a good advisor if the advisor does 2 things. Number one, they always put the client first. They make sure that the client is able to avoid running out of money. Number 2 addresses inflation. Number 3 addresses volatility. Number 4 addresses legacy, costs of catastrophic illness, and also addresses making sure that there's a legacy for the grandkids, et cetera, et cetera. The second thing in picking a really great advisor is someone who will talk to you once every 3 months about the market, about the economy, about your portfolio, cares about you. We did a study in which we discovered that 85% of the advisors out there that we'll work with will sell something and never talk to the person again. Well, you've got a really sharp advisor when they talk to you once every 3 months by telephone or face-to-face. Not a newsletter, not a robocall. They'll talk to you on the telephone once every 3 months.
Why has the art of customer service been lost these days, Kerry?
I think it's more the advisors. They're so pressed and they're working to, work with other people, and it's a lot of reasons. But I think that most advisors just don't really understand how important that relationship is.
Again, folks, his name is Dr. Kerry Johnson. The name of the book, I recommend everyone gets it. If you have any money at all that you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing with, Behavioral Investing: Why Smart People Make Dumb Mistakes with Their Money. And if you join this interview late, or if you want to share it with somebody else or listen to it again, go to financialsafari.com and click on the As Heard on the Show icon. Dr. Johnson, it's been my pleasure having you on today.
Thanks, Pete.